Hi, everybody. Welcome to the South Coast Food Policy Council quarterly meeting for 2023. And we're very excited to have you all here. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I'm going to do a screen share and we'll get started then. All right. So welcome. My name is Christine. I'm with the South Coast Food Policy Council, which is a program of the Marion Institute. And the Marion Institute engages individuals and communities in an integrative approach to whole body health. And we do this through our programs that work focused on promoting health equity, advocating for food justice, and building resilient communities. So in our quarterly meeting, our very particular mission that we want to go through and really is exemplified by all the work that we'll be sharing is that our mission is to convene, connect, and advocate for local producers, consumers, community members, and all who seek policy and systems change that strengthen our regional food system and improve community health and eliminate food insecurity. So that's our mission. And we're going to talk about how we do that in a second, but I wanted to just go over the Community Advisory Board. We'll do an overview of who that is. We'll talk about the goals and what has been achieved within the working groups. We'll talk about food equity advisors, the successes we had this past year, what you can do, and certainly with questions. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. So I'm going to invite you to put your video on because I have a question now that will require raised hands. So if you could put your video on, if you're in a position to put your video on, if you can. You may not be able to, but I'm going to encourage you to put your video on because I'm going to have a question that requires raised hands. Okay. So if everybody put your video on. Okay. So if you could put it into gallery mode so you can see everybody. And the question is, how many of you are Community Advisory Board members? Raise your hand, raise your hand in the screen. Awesome. Okay. How many of you are new Community Advisory Board members? Keep your hands up. All right. So I want to welcome Judy Devine, Eric Rousseau, Phil Messier, Laura Smith, and let me go to the next page. Tom McClare, hi. And Marlene Cerritos Rivas. And did I miss anybody? Just want to welcome you. And then the next question I have, keep yourself on video. Who's BNAP on the?
Bill Napolitano.
I'm sorry?
Bill Napolitano from SERPED.
Hi, welcome.
Hi.
Yeah. And for those of you who are on working groups, if you're in a working group, please raise your hand. All of you are in working groups. And again, just look through everybody that's here on the different screens as you're going through. These are all the people in working groups, and there's also more who are not necessarily in this meeting. So this is definitely a community-driven entity, and I want to recognize that as well. And we have our food equity advisors who are also in working groups too. So we want to say thank you for everybody who is both a Community Advisory Board member and a working group member and a food equity advisor. You guys are fantastic. We've done a lot this year, which is what we're going to go over. And for those of you who are new to this, you'll be able to see what we've done and some of the successes that we have had. All right. So I'm going to go back to screen share. Okay. So in looking at who we are, the Community Advisory Board, as you saw from all the raised hands, is about 27 members from the community, and they've been meeting from September on. And this is just a quick reminder of what we've done. So this group has gotten together and really put together the essential priorities from the 2021 food system assessment, put together a strategic plan, put together working groups that we've been meeting in. So they've been busy really, for quite a while. And we've got a lot of things happening because of that. So we have 4 working groups that the Community Advisory Board has put together based on our priorities: Education and Communication Working Group, the Food Access Working Group, the Capacity Building Working Group, and the Policy Working Group. And so now I'm going to go over and share all those things that is happening within the South Coast Food Policy Council. So in this particular working group, the Education and Communication Working Group, we have 13 people. Awesome group. The overarching goal of the education and communication is really to share the information about the food system or food literacy into the public. We realized early on in the work that we were doing in strategy building was that we needed to really drive this really hard. If we can do a really good education campaign around the local food system, then that will actually help all the other initiatives, whether it's policy or the capacity building side. But we really needed to get started on this. So the priorities within that is to develop an education campaign that includes all the pieces of the food system, and will also include things like expanding the September Hunger Awareness Month. It'll also be about creating a summer program, a Eat Local Challenge Month. It'll also, this is the group that's responsible for the food summit that we do every year. And the cool thing that we're doing in our MI website, we have the ability to, if you go to the MI website, you can actually change the language. So you can read everything on the South Coast Food Policy Council in the language that you want to read. So that's one of the things we've done. Another thing we've done is we've taken action by submitting a grant to MDAR about funding local food policy councils. So we have submitted a grant, which is great news. We are also currently in our little teams working on the education campaign itself. So I'm going to stop sharing. Is there anybody in the education communication group that wants to add anything? Or are there any questions from the community or any clarifications you would like to make? Okay. All right, so those are some of the pieces that we're working on. So we're really focused right now on creating the education campaign. And I just want to take a shout out to Department of Health in New Bedford. They're working with us to be able to do translations, and some other community members as well. So we appreciate that work that we're going to be doing together. So this is pretty fantastic. All right, I'm going to share again, and we'll move on to the next working group. Okay, so food access working group. This is great too. We have 11 people in this working group, and the overall goal is to really, for environmental justice and low-income communities, to access local, healthy, nutritious food that's culturally relevant. So looking at what we're doing, we kind of took those priorities and fine-tuned it into 2 main issues that we're going to be working on. One is establishing a gleaning program, which is, when I say gleaning, that means harvesting from the farms. 30% of food is left into the farms and not brought into the food system. So we want to create a program that will actually take that food that's been gleaned and put it into the emergency food system, like the food pantries and so on. So right now we're actually working on that. And the second thing we're doing is looking at food recovery, which gleaning is essentially a part of that, but food recovery in the sense of there's edible food that can be brought into the system, whether you're a university, a hospital, a school system, or a restaurant. We can actually recover that food and bring it back, whether it's through the New Bedford Hunger Commission or it's through rescuing leftover cuisine. So right now we're working on these 2 specific goals in this particular working group. And some of the things that we've done so far, we invited the Boston area gleaners and Hope's Harvest in Rhode Island to come into our work group. They did presentations on their gleaning programs, and we learned a lot through that. And we're looking at how do we create our own based on some of that. So at this point, what we've done is we are also looking at we did something similar with the food recovery side. We invited Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, Dana Siles, to come in and give a presentation on what that looks like for food recovery. And we also asked Meg from the New Bedford Regional Refuge Management District to come in and talk about what does it look like, the landfills in our area, and what are the rules that have been passed around waste, food waste with organics. So we've done a few of those things. I'm going to stop. Oh, there was one other piece that we took. We took action and we submitted a letter of interest for a grant to help us establish a gleaning program. So we are taking action and recognizing there's some costs associated with this. So I'm going to stop sharing there for the food access group. Does anybody from the food access group want to add anything, or are there any questions from the community? You can just take yourself off of mute if you have a question. Okay. All right, Sarah.
Hi, I'm not in the food access group, but I was thinking you were talking about gleaning from or taking from like restaurants and leftover foods and that kind of thing. Market basket. I was at the market basket the other night. I was going, oh my gosh, look at all this food here that could be. So that might be added into it.
Brilliant, Sarah. Thank you so much. We're going to look into that. I know there's a lot of potential there, so we want to grab that. So thank you very much. It's a great idea, and we'll add that into what we're doing. Thank you so much. If you in the community, if you guys have a contact with a market basket, please send them our way. Please email me at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. Thank you. Great idea, Sarah. Awesome. All right, any other questions or comments about the food access working group? Okay. All right, we are going to move on then to the next working group. So the next working group we have is capacity building. And we're really looking at, we have 8 people in this group, all working together to figure out, to focus on the physical structure, the physical infrastructure and the networking structure that we need to build in our region to develop a good, healthy, resilient regional food system. So we want to identify and work with and convene members of commercial enterprises to help divert organic waste, which we have, and I'll talk about that in a second. We want to identify and support pilot projects to establish an infrastructure. So what those pieces look like tangibly is that we took action by inviting Coastal Food Shed, who is on this working group, to give kind of, this is what a mobile food market business, a food business, so there's some of the barriers we're coming across. And so we're starting to investigate some of that and how do we address those barriers in the food business side. And then we're also looking at, we invited Black Earth Compost to come, who's also in this working group, and to give a presentation on what does it mean to put composting in our area. We don't have a physical infrastructure of composting in our region. So we were working with Black Earth Compost to kind of look at what that potentially would look like. We're also thinking of looking at restaurants in our area and meeting with them to talk about how they're diverting organics, whether we want to establish food recovery with different restaurant owners, or we want to look at how do they work with Black Earth Compost and so on. So we're really looking at that. And we also took action by hiring Holly Fowler, who actually put together our 2021 food system assessment, who created a paper to help us think about what do we need to even develop a business plan to put a regional business innovation district, a food innovation district into our region. So you can see that picture there in the front. It's kind of like a back end. What does food look like when we're aggregating it and we're packaging it and so on? So we're looking to develop a food innovation district. And so we have now a precursor to a business plan. So it just helps us think through the questions that we need to make this work. And regarding the priority of creating more physical storage space, like dry storage space, frozen storage space, refrigerated storage space. The Massachusetts Department of Agriculture is actually doing research right now across Massachusetts to see where's their space. Is it potential for our food pantries to partner with these different spaces, these entities that have space, so we can actually put more food into the food pantries and into our region of all the food providers who provide food. So those are the things we've done so far in the capacity working group. So I'm going to stop here. Does anybody in the capacity building working group want to add to this, or anybody have any questions about this? All right, seeing no hands raised. Okay, then I'm going to move on. Okay. All right, the next working group is the policy working group. So we know policy impacts a lot of things, especially in the food system. So we want to both create policies that build resilient communities. We want to educate legislators and the public and get all these different interdependent things working together on creating good policies for all of us. So some of those things involve looking at our plans around developing permanent funding of HIP. For those of you who don't know, HIP is the Healthy Incentive Program that goes along with SNAP. We want to create that a permanent part of the state budget. We want to advocate for equity in agriculture. There's a specific bill that we've given testimony on before. We want to do it again. We want to advocate for permanent funding in the Farm to School grant program. Right now, it's not permanent, and so we want to create this in our budget system. We are also looking at following the pilot programs associated with food as medicine. So there are some pilot programs that have gone into that phase, and so it's a long-term project of how do we actually get the healthcare system and the doctors to write prescriptions for good food so people can then go to our local food source, whether it's a farm stand or a mobile market, and get the vegetables and produce they need to eat healthy. So we're following that legislation and those pilot programs. And we want to advocate for other food system priorities within the budget, such as our local CMAP and the Mass in Motion and different food system budget items. So we'll be working on those specific issues. And this year, we're also going to take on a new challenge of actually doing advocacy in the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill sunsetting in September. There's a lot of things we could suggest into the Farm Bill to improve it. So we are looking at that as well. So the different areas of strategies this working group has already done is we're going to have some folks who are going to write op-eds that will educate the public and legislators. We're going to set up meetings with legislators and start developing relationships with staffers and legislators. And we're going to create this particular group is going to create the policy education around the food system that will go into the education campaign that we spoke about earlier. And we're also to continue to do advocacy of providing testimony, pushing out legislative actions into the community and so on. So those are the things the Food Policy Council for the policy working group is working. I'm going to stop. Anybody in the policy working group have any questions? Are there any questions from the community or anything you want to share? Okay, Sarah. You just, yeah.
Sorry. I can't remember if this is my group or not, the policy working group. I was thinking it was education, but anyway, yesterday I attended, and I'm sure everybody's heard about the extra COVID SNAP benefits at the beginning of the month have been stopped. They will be stopping in March. That will be the last payment. So everybody is freaking out left and right. There are going to be some consumers that are, I attended this meeting yesterday for a couple hours. It was quite eye-opening. This is not DTA's fault. This is not, this is pretty much up to Congress. Congress did this. And it's to help support summer programs down the road, but right now it's causing a big cut. So we're actually going to have consumers that are going to be going to the supermarket that are in transition of getting their SNAP benefits or HIP benefits, which a lot of people don't know about that yet. You really got to push that HIP benefit. But they go to check out and suddenly they don't have any money on their card. So now we're leaving it up to the cashier at the grocery store to now explain to this person, you can't get your groceries because you suddenly don't have your $95 on the first of the month. So this is going to be a major thing, getting that up and right. I'm sorry if I took too long. Thank you.
No, you're fine, Sarah. And in fact, there is a SNAP coalition for Massachusetts, and they had just sent out, and Sarah Lavoisier, do you have this? Can you share this if you have it in the chat? Okay. So there is a flyer that DTA put together to help people in the community. If you are one of these people, these are the directions on what you should be doing. So I just asked Sarah if she can share it. If she has it, if not, I will be sharing it when I push this information out after the meeting. And it goes through, here's some phone numbers, here's community resources, this is what you should do, and so on. So there is some DTA is aware of that. So it's our job now to push that information out into the community as much as we can through all of our networks. So that's a great, I'm glad you brought up that challenge, Sarah. It is something that we're aware of and we're going to be working on. So for those of you who belong, thank you, Sarah. For those of you who belong to the South Coast Food Alert, we sent that out, and Sarah just shared that flyer in the chat. Thank you. So that, if you can please download that, those are the instructions in Spanish and in English on what to do if you are in that position where you're going to be losing that $95 a month. And that is something we're going to be working on the Farm Bill. We're going to be asking them to increase SNAP. So this is one of those things and where you can see advocacy can make a big difference. So thank you. That's great. And she put in some other languages, Brazil and Khmer too. So thanks. All right. Great question, Sarah. Any other policy related questions? Laura, go ahead.
Not really a question, but a comment as a farmer. And I talk to many farmers across the whole country, and their angst about the Farm Bill. So I don't have time to be on another working group, but any way I can hear what's going on regarding the Farm Bill.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, we're going to be talking with a few organizations, and we are representing many stakeholders. So we have to figure out what we're going to be doing with this. I don't want to promise anything right now. The only thing I know for sure is that we're going to be working on SNAP. Beyond that, but we're going to be looking at all these stakeholders and what they're saying around the Farm Bill. But we also want to take our lead from different coalitions who are the experts in that area. So just be aware for the Farm Bill. It is pretty comprehensive, and just know ahead of time, it's going to take, you guys know federal legislation, it's going to take a while, and they'll have two different bills in the House and Senate, and they'll have to come to an agreement, and that usually takes some time. So yes, so the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative is on top of that, and I just want to give a shout out to Coastal Food Shed. They brought up to me, can we make the farmers market coupon all year round? And it is in the Farm Bill. So it is something that the Massachusetts Food System Collaborative knows about, and it's in the 2015 Massachusetts Food Plan of Action that they champion having those farmers markets coupons all year round. So we'll be advocating, we'll be looking at that and our other coalition partners on what they're doing. So thank you. Thanks for that. Any other questions on the policy? All right. Okay. All right. I'll go back to continuing on. Okay. So we also have food equity advisors, and food equity advisors are people in the community that have experience of food insecurity. And we have 3 people so far. this year. We've had 3 people the previous year. We have people rotating on and off. So we have one from Fairhaven, one from Wareham, one from Fall River. And I'm going to invite, oh, great, okay, Sarah, I didn't know how you felt. So Sarah Buck, who has been speaking and asking questions, she's one of our food equity advisors from Fairhaven. She's in both our education and communication working group and our policy working group, and has already done significant amount of advocacy already. There was the White House Food Hunger Conference, the Hunger and Nutrition Conference, and Sarah actually gave them video testimony of why HIP and SNAP are so important. And that's our job. Our job is to raise the voice of people in the community who have the direct experience of food insecurity. One of our other food equity advisors actually worked with Laura Smith, who's a farmer here, Sarah Leboisier and CMAP, and others at a farmer's market in Fall River. And she got in front of the media and was talking about how important HIP is. And so there's a lot of things that we want to do to help raise the voice of our community members. And they're super assets for us. And you can see from what Sarah shared, the concerns, the real concerns, and we want to address those real concerns in the work that we do in our community. The other things we've done to actually find food equity advisors, we've had focus groups all over the place. We've had a focus group in Fall River, Wareham, and in New Bedford. And by listening to the community, pulling their thoughts together, we also run these plans of what we're thinking by them and get their input as well. And so we're really trying to listen to the community. And if they're excited, we invite them to become food equity advisors to join us in the work that we're doing. So we are actively seeking more members right now for food equity advisors. So if you know someone who's potentially interested, please email me at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. We are looking for more food equity advisors to bring on board. I'm going to stop sharing. Are there any questions or anybody want to add anything? And just unmute. Go ahead, Sarah.
I would also say, add to that, bilingual would be a big asset to have as a food equity advisor, if it's a functional bilingual. And also, I'm disabled, so that's, I really like to speak out for the disabled community as far as access to food. So I don't know if you maybe have some other folks that maybe have trouble with logistics.
Okay, that's great, Sarah. Yeah, so we are looking for people from multiple backgrounds and to bring into this group, including what Sarah just suggested. So thank you for raising that again. And we are looking at that. And so again, if you have people you know, please bring them forward, at least just come to me and we'll have a conversation on how and what that looks like when we onboard somebody who's a food equity advisor, because there's a lot of relationship building work. It takes time. And then we bring them, we ask where they want to enter. Do they want to be a community advisory board member? Do they want to be a working group member? Do they just want to stay in this little group? You know, so it's really up to, we just give the choice to the people in the community how they want to enter into the work that we're doing. So that's really good. Any other questions about food equity advisors or suggestions? Okay. I'm going to continue. Okay, so we've had some successes. Now, for those of you who are in the working groups and you've been with us or a CAB member, this will be familiar to you. But every year we have a food summit. And this particular past year, ours was, we work with the Office of Senator Mark Montigny, and we work with UMass Dartmouth this past year. And it was the intersection of food and basic needs of healthcare, housing, and transportation. And so this is a very interesting, it was an interesting food summit, which is recorded in our website. So you can go and look there. But we really were looking at how does food look like in transportation? What are the issues involved in there? And actually one of our new community advisory board members is actually from transportation, CERTA. And Eric is now on board kind of breaking through the silos, which is what a food policy council does. We break through those silos to make sure the entire problem is looked at, because this is a systems issue. So we have to look at all these systems and figure out how to work on it, because the food is the commonality is food. So just to say that this food summit was pretty fantastic. One of the keynote speaker, Brandy Brooks, said, we are all nomads and follow the food and build towns around how we get our food and water. We derive medicine from food and create spiritual practices and cultural norms around food in every aspect of our life. We forget that food is how we embody our relationships and what we believe in the world. And when we talk about housing and transportation, we see the ways we have been segregated, and it is reflected in who has access and quality of food. So you have to think about food intersectionally. So that was a really good way to kick off this particular food summit. We had our other people on the panel, Alexis Walls from the assistance, who's the assistant campaign director for Massachusetts Public Health Association. We had Damon Chaplin from the director, who's director of New Bedford Department of Health. We had Josh Emerald, who was at that time the assistant director of PACE in New Bedford. And we had Eric Rousseau, the administrator of the Southeastern Regional Transit Authority. So this year, the Education Communication Working Group will be working on another food summit. So if you have ideas about what you'd like to see in the next food summit, please send them to me at sfpc@marioninstitute.org. We will talk through it in our Food Education and Communication Working Group. And so this is again, a community-driven thing, and we want your input as well. Any questions on that so far? Okay, I'll continue. All right, the next success we had was in advocacy. So we asked the network, our South Coast Food Policy Council members at large, to write 4 letters this past year. One was on the Massachusetts food system budget items, which is pretty substantial ask. And then we asked people to support making HIP a permanent part of the Massachusetts Economic Development Plan. And there was something called, what you're probably familiar with now, but at that point it was called the Common Application. For people who apply for Mass Health for healthcare, they could automatically receive SNAP, WIC, utility, and other benefits just through clicking one button. So it was an advocacy ask that we pushed really hard on, and we got what we wanted. So that was fantastic. And we also advocated for a grant for food policy councils across Massachusetts. So organizations like us can apply for a grant to do all these great initiatives that we've been working on. So some of our advocacy successes, we did provide written testimony to secure $30 million from ARPA for the Massachusetts Food Infrastructure Grant. And we secured COVID funding for the Farm to School Grant Program, which just got off EV this year, and it's called FRESH now. And so you can still apply for FRESH right now. We also had advocacy success in co-sponsorship on asking about the One Common app. So that went through. So now people who apply for Mass Health, they'll automatically go get SNAP and WIC and other benefits. We had success in all the food system budget funding, particularly around HIP and CMAP and the emergency food program and others. So we've had some good success there. Another thing we did, which was the first time we did it, was a candidate forum. And why that's important is this is an opportunity for us to educate candidates on the food system issues that we all care about. And it was also an opportunity for the public to be educated on who potentially do they really want to elect. So we had this candidate forum, and it was I thought it was a brilliant success. We actually put together all piece questions, 7 questions, and so for instance, one of the questions was, climate change is impacting our ability to produce enough food to feed people. We have fires and droughts in the West and flooding caused by storms in the Southeast. And currently, we are just emerging from the worst drought in recent memory. All these conditions result in a breakdown of the food production and supply chain. How would you combat climate change so local farming, fishing, and aquaculture industries are supported in building a more resilient food system? So these are the kinds of questions that we are interested in as representing stakeholders in our community around the food system. And we are going to do this every year, and we're not just going to do one. This was kind of our test. We wanted to see what it would be like. We wanted to make sure we did it right. We wanted to learn from it. So moving forward in every electoral process, we're going to have candidate forums moving forward into different districts. So this was just one that we worked with, and we did it in partnership with CMAP as well. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions or comments about those successes so far? Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's important. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing more. All right. So a few more things. How you can get involved. What can you do? So be engaged. When we send out legislative advocacy action alerts through that big email system we have, we want you to take action. We want you to send a personal letter to that legislator. We will always put a template letter in there. You can add your own story in there, but we give you the background information. We'll give you the letter so you can immediately take action. Participate in our events. I just went through several of them, whether it's the candidate forum, the food summit, and other things we're going to be doing throughout the year. We ask also if you would donate and support our work. And if you have any questions or if you have ideas, you can always contact me through sfpc@marioninstitute.org. And last, have any questions? Stop sharing. Any questions from the community here, or comments or ideas? Okay, so what do you guys you feel like we're going in the right direction? You happy with everything that's happening? Yeah, awesome. All right. All right, if there's no more questions, awesome. My last thing is just the contact information again. Here's my contact information. I will be sending this recording out through the different email systems that we have. We'll also post the recording and the notes on the website. All right, any final questions?
I just want to jump in, and I'm thrilled with the turnout today. I see so many of our CAB members and members of our working group, and this work can't get done without all of you guys and the effort that you've put into this Food Policy Council for the last 2 years has been incredible, and I'm grateful and excited to do more and to do better. So thank you all.
Thanks, Liz. And Sarah?
I have one question. You always do such a great job in organizing this, but one of the things you were talking about was how many members on each of the groups, and I think you didn't for the capacity building or the policy group. So it's just a minor thing, but do you have that membership list?
I think we have 8 in capacity building, and I think likely the same number with policy. Okay, but let me go.
Thank you.
That. Okay. And Sarah Buck, you have a hand raised? Okay, and you just need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah, and I just went blank. So, oh, here we go. No, sorry, got a lot on my plate right now. Yeah, no. What's our goals for the next year? What are we looking ahead to do? Should we talk about that, or is it not?
Yeah, we can talk about that. Let me go back. I'll go back into the screen share, and I'll go back into the groups.
About going into and testing the legislation. Again,
Yeah,
And
so the
we-
goal of the education communication group is to create that education campaign, which will flow out through radio. It'll be on bulletin boards on the highway. It'll be through TV, email, everywhere we can go. It'll be in multiple languages. It'll also be on our website. And it'll also include, apart from just a foundation of this is what the food system is, we'll also be implementing as part of that education campaign an Eat Local Challenge month in the summer. It'll be part of the September Hunger Awareness Month, and it'll also flow into the Food Summit. So those are the plans for this year for this particular working group. And in this particular working group, we're working on creating a gleaning program. So we're really working on actually developing what that would look like. So if we get all our ducks in a row, we can actually have kind of binders and just like hand it over and be like, hey, this is what it looks like for farming. This is what it looks like for volunteers and so on. So that those are the pieces we're working on. And the food recovery side is actually expanding the amount of food that's being recovered into our area. So whether it's going to the Hunger Commission, it's, you know, to be dispersed, or it's going to Rescuing Leftover Cuisine to be dispersed. So those are the pieces that we're working on right now. And the capacity building is really looking at building the infrastructure. Some of those pieces of infrastructure have to do with, we don't have organic composting in our region. And so that is one of the things we're working on. So we're really pulling on several threads. So it'll take the other pieces to continue to look at those pieces around building a potential business plan, which means a lot of networking has to be done for what a food innovation district would look like. So those are some of the pieces that we're working on there. Yes, you've raised your hand. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Christine, this is Bill. I was wondering, is Holly's work done on the Food Innovation District? Is that report done, or is that in process? Because we're doing a regional resiliency plan at the Regional Planning Agency, and I think something like that would be a nice piece to put in there and maybe give it a little more oomph and help to create some of those contacts that I think you're looking for. And I know I've spoken with Liz before and a few people on the outside about creating maybe a building space for a food hub.
Liz, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so Bill, it's similar to what we've talked about, right? It's still a work in progress where we're trying to look and see if we have the right partners, the right fund, you know, getting the funding in place for it. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, as you know, but always happy to have a conversation with you offline on how collaboratively we can work to make it, you know, a stronger application on either side. So happy to talk with you. Yep,
all right,
always.
That sounds great.
Thanks, Bill. That was good. All right. I'll go back to where we are. In the policy working group, those particular plans involve advocating for the budget items within the food system. There's a ton of maybe 15 items, but we also want to make sure we're funding HIP becomes permanent, the farm to school becomes permanent, the equity in agriculture gets passed, and there's other equity pieces, bills that we're looking at as well that are wrapped around that. And then we're also looking at working on the farm bill to improve the farm bill, in particular, raising the amount of SNAP. There's a ton of other pieces up to the farm bill. It's enormous, but those are some of the pieces that we're going to be working on for that. And for the food equity advisors, we're really looking at how do we recruit more, and then how do we work to and then engage them in these different working groups or the community advisory board. So Sarah, does that help with your work, where we're going, what our goals are? Okay. All right. Any other questions? Thank you for those of you who are putting in the chat. Yeah, it's great to see like what the actual successes are and how far we've come in a very short time. So thank you all for your support. Oh, like Liz said, over this last few years, you guys have been incredible, and we really appreciate it. And we want to continue to engage you in this work. So that said, I have nothing else. And if anybody else wants to jump in and say something, you're welcome to at this time. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining our quarterly meeting. we'll, like I said, I'll send out the notes and everything. It'll also be on our webpage. Thank you so much. Have a great day.